Hi, this is Elizabeth with Felted Sky, here with the instructions for our Pumpkins Needle Felting Kit and our Sculpting with Wool series of kits. So let's go ahead and open up the box and talk about what's inside. So first we have the instruction sheet and the Beginner's Guide to Needle Felting. So this is just some good general information that I recommend reading, especially if you are new to needle felting. So check that out before you get started and hopefully it will be helpful to you. And then in the instruction sheet, I just want to mention one thing, which is that this extra set of numbers next to each step, that is the timestamp for the video. So you could fast forward or rewind or skip around in the video very easily just using that timestamp. So that is what I wanted to tell you about with that. The rest is pretty straightforward. So in here we have two types of felting wool. We have our Felter's Core wool. So this is a wool batting and we put this on the inside of the sculpture. So this is what we're using to make the shape, and then we're going to cover the shape with our pretty colored roving. So this is our Felter's Flowing wool. And it is a very pretty roving. Most of the colors are kind of heathered. So you'll want to just untwist this, open it up, and unfold, and get it ready to use before we get started. Also note the color name on the label here. So just to keep track of the colors, I do refer to the color names in the instruction sheet and the video. And if you would ever want to reorder, you might want to keep a little piece of wool perhaps with that label, or just find your own way of keeping track of the colors. Okay, I'm going to pull out the needles and move the box out of the way. So your needles are in this cute little tube, and in this kit you get 2 black and 2 yellow needles. So this is the 36 triangle and the 40 triangle, and you can refer to the back of your tube just to remember what you have if you would need to reorder these. So let me go ahead and put the rest of these away, but we'll talk just a little bit about how I recommend holding the needles. So you have a spare in there also of each type in case you were to break one needle. Hopefully the other one will help you get through the project. So anyway, with needles, I do not actually recommend holding at the top with 2 fingers like that, or even with 3 fingers at the very top of the needle, but instead I recommend putting the tip of that needle kind of in the crook of your pointer finger, something like that, and then hold a little bit lower with your thumb and middle finger. So the idea is to also, some people use their ring finger down there on the needle. So the idea is to support the needle shaft a little more, hopefully help you to go straight in and out, and have an efficient and effective needle grip. So that's the one that I recommend, and hopefully that will help you to think about your needle grip as you get started. Alright, so to complete the project you will also need one other thing, which is a mat. So this is our foam mat. It's a nice dense foam, and most people that are new to needle felting do start out on a foam mat. Of course, it is the most economical, so probably the most widely used still for sure is foam, but it's not as eco-friendly. It does wear out, sometimes wears out fairly quickly depending on how much you're using it, how much you're poking into it. So that is a little about foam, but it does work fine if that's what you decide to go with. And then there are some other options now. So in the video I'm going to be felting on this, which is our burlap mat that we carry here at Felted Sky, and it's 2 layers of burlap and filled with rice, so kind of like a rice-filled pillow, and it comes without the rice, and you fill it up using the zipper on the side there. So anyway, this has become my favorite for sculpting on, and it's a natural material and more long-lasting than the foam for sure. So that's what I'll be on in the video. And then your one other option would be a wool mat. So this is the wool mat that we carry, that we make here at Felted Sky, and this has become my favorite for my flat needle felting projects, but it does also work fine for sculpting on. So it's more of an investment, but if you think you're going to be doing a lot of felting, you might want to go ahead and upgrade. It will last a very long time. Alright, so now that we've talked about all that, I think we're ready to get started. So here I have the 2 rolls of core wool that are in the kit, and we need to unfold them, and we're going to tear them into strips. So this one also had an extra piece. Sometimes they do if we're trying to get up to the 1 ounce weight. So when we're tearing into the core wool, let me get a pumpkin to show you. So we need to tear strips that are going to yield the right shapes that we want. So for my biggest pumpkin, I want the widest strip on the core wool. So about as wide as the pumpkin is tall. So I'm going to measure. So the pumpkin is about 4 inches tall and 4 inches wide almost. So I want a strip for that one that will be 4 inches wide, and this pumpkin is about 3 inches wide, or 3 inches tall rather, and our little one is maybe 3.5 wide and 2 inches tall. So this is in the instruction sheet, but we're going to tear the core wool into a strip that's 4 inches wide for our biggest pumpkin, 4 inches wide, and then for the middle pumpkin we're going to do a strip that's about 3 inches wide, and then there will be a small strip left about 2 inches wide for the smallest pumpkin, or the shortest pumpkin rather. Okay, so here is my widest strip. And then tearing the next one so that I have the thinnest strip for the short pumpkin, and then the one on the right here is for the medium-sized orange pumpkin. So 3 strips, 4 inches wide, 2 inches wide, and 3 inches wide. Hopefully that makes sense to you, but you'll see what we're doing with them soon. So we're going to do the exact same thing with the other piece of core wool. So we'll have 2 strips then that are 4 inches wide. So here is my wider strip. Set that aside. And then here is my thinnest strip, about 2 inches wide. These don't have to be exact, but that's the one for the shortest pumpkin. Oh, actually this is my one for the medium pumpkin. Yeah, so I'm going to tear off a little bit of extra. You might have a little bit of extra left over. Okay, so now I'm going to put my little extra piece that came in my roll of core wool in the middle here, but if you don't have one, that's fine. You'll just start rolling. And I'm going to start rolling with my thinnest strip, so this is for the shortest little squat pumpkin. You want to keep it smooshed together like that, so we don't want it getting too tall. We want to keep it short. So about like that, and then I'm going to use some of the next strip. Again, this was the other thin strip. And wrap it around until it seems like it will be big enough. So I don't need all of it. Right now it's 3.5 to 4 inches wide. It's going to compact a little bit as we felt it. So I'm going to go ahead and tear off soon here. So just a little bit of extra, but I'm going to go ahead and tear that off because I think this is big enough. And there it is. So here it is in relation to the pumpkin. So you see it's going to shrink down a little bit. If I kind of squeeze it and smooth it out, you can see that it is close to that shape. So that's the roll for our first pumpkin. Now I'll get the 3-inch wide roll for the second pumpkin, and I'm going to kind of squeeze it and make sure it doesn't lengthen out too much either. And I'm even going to pull a little bit of that core wool to make it thinner. And then we'll put on some of the next strip. And again, we might not need all of it. And I'm kind of folding the edges a bit and lengthening it out. So we want to keep it kind of smooshed in and compacted there. We don't want it to get too tall. Keep more of that wool in the center if you can. It's looking pretty good. I'm gonna check. So it's about 3 inches wide, which is pretty good for this pumpkin. So I'll pull off the extra. So I don't think I need that either. This is big enough now. And so here is that shape next to its pumpkin. So again, these don't have to be exact, but getting your roll pretty close in the beginning is very helpful. So that does help you to make the shape once we start felting. So this was the wool for the tallest pumpkin. And I'm gonna pull that out, and again, even with this one, we need to make sure there's enough wool in the center now so that it's nice and rounded. And I'll measure here and then decide if I want the rest of this wool on here or not. And I'll tear off a little bit. Alright, so there is our last roll. Could be slightly big, but I think once it's compacted down at the ends, it's going to be alright. So something like that is what you should have. And you can always re-roll if you don't like your rolls. If you think they're not ending up the right shape, you can redo. You can always re-watch this part of the video. I'm going to put out my burlap mat that I'm going to be felting on. And I like to flatten it out. The rice gets a little lumpy sometimes, so that's flattened out. And now I'm going to get, we're going to do this. The shortest pumpkin is the one we'll do in the video, but they are all worked the same way, so it's really that beginning roll that helps determine the shape. And here's the one for that pumpkin. So once you know how to do one pumpkin, you can just follow the same steps to do your other ones. And we're starting with the black painted needle, which is the 36 triangle. And I'm going to start poking in on the top. So I'm going to angle my needle towards the center. You can kind of see that. So before I really get to poking, you see the angle there. So I'm always pushing towards the center, I feel like. And the way that you're stabbing in with the wool is the way that the wool is going to compact in. It's going to move in that direction. So you want to stab in pretty deeply, and you see I'm kind of getting all of these layers of wool that we rolled all felting together there. And I'm turning often, so we want to do our shaping gradually. So we want to go over the whole thing and then keep going back over it, but do it all kind of gradually. So what is happening here, the stabbing action, the poking action of the needle, there's the little tiny barbs on the end of the needle, and those are causing the wool fibers, which have microscopic scales on them, so the barbs cause the wool fibers to tangle together and stick together, and then they will stay like that. So pretty amazing. You can use these needles to sculpt wool into all kinds of shapes and do all kinds of great stuff, but a pumpkin is a nice way to start. So here I am on the, just to show you a little bit, you can do from the side on your other pumpkins. I was starting with this flat on the mat for this pumpkin just because of its shape. So we're just going to keep stabbing into the wool and start our shaping. So we're just wanting it to all hold together, and you can see kind of that angle that I'm bringing the needle, and it's bringing the wool towards the center. So now I will turn it. I'll go ahead and turn it and work from the side. So just watch your fingers. I didn't say this to begin with, but do watch your fingers and your other hand going in this direction. So we're going to poke from the side and still kind of go up towards the center of the side. So we want to push the wool up in that direction so that our pumpkin is nice and round there. So pokes do happen, but please try and keep your other fingers and hand out of the way. I'm just quite practiced at not poking myself, so I kind of know how far I can go towards my other fingers. Alright, so now that we've done that side, we'll flip around to the other side. I'm going to do the same thing, so poking towards that center. So we're trying to curve it in that way to shape the pumpkin. So whatever way we want the wool to go to get it shaped is the way we need to poke in the angle with the needle. And again, you want to be stabbing well in at this point so that we felt the inside of the pumpkin, not just around the shell of it, so to speak. Here I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video. So for the sake of getting through the project on the video, there is a lot of poking to be done, so we'll do it a little quicker this way. But you can still see what I'm doing. So here I'm back to where I started, and I'm going over all of this again. So on the top, or this might end up being the bottom. So we just need to do each area, and we're going to keep poking until the shape is firming up more, and it's going to compact a little bit as well as you're felting. The wool definitely shrinks down a bit as it's getting more firm. So we just continue on until we're happy with the shape and we don't have as much squish to the shape. It needs to firm up a bit more still. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of do just a little more, and then I'm going to look at my original, see what I think. It's pretty close really, and give it a little squish. So it should still definitely have some give to it. You don't want to harden it up because then it will be too hard to put the ribs in and have the nice little grooves in the pumpkin. So a little bit of squish. Now we're going to switch to the yellow needle for putting on the outside color. So this is the color Butterscotch, and I'm just kind of getting the roving untwisted and flattened out, and I'm going to hold the end at the center of the top of the pumpkin and then hold here, really more at the side, and then we're going to pull off the extra like that, and then there it is. That's how we're going to cover the whole thing. So we need to put on pieces that overlap each other a little bit. So I'm going to start at the top center there, hold there, and then hold also here at the side and pull off that extra. So we're going to continue with that. So the top, we want the piece of roving to be at the top in the center and the bottom in the center. So now I'm going to poke a little bit. You could poke each one of these as you put them on. I just put on, as you saw, a few pieces. It was maybe 4 pieces, and now I'm going to poke it on. It's a little too much to keep holding to try and get all of the color on in one go, so I'm going to go ahead and poke this just to get it to stay in place while I add the rest. So we're going to be poking over this again. I'm just wanting it to stay put while I put the rest of my color on. And here I'm running out a little bit, but I'm not going to break into the next piece of this color. You do have another one in the kit if you need to go ahead and use part of that other piece on this pumpkin. Do go ahead and do that, but I think I got this covered enough with just my one piece. So I'm going to go ahead and poke it to attach. So with the yellow needle, we don't need to poke in as far, so you don't want to be stabbing in quite as deep as when we were doing the shaping with the black needle. So this is more to work on the surface with the yellow needle. So now we just need to get all of our color attached, and so you can poke a little bit more gently. I mean, I'm still going in some because our shape is not super firm. But for the most part, we're poking a little less deep and a little more gently and trying to get our surface more smoothed out. So at this point, we still have lots of puncture holes, but as we go along, those will be a little less prominent. You see I'm kind of poking the direction the fibers are going. I'm poking the way that they are going. So I just need to go all over the whole pumpkin once or twice. And we're going to be doing more shaping as we go along. So this doesn't need to be super well felted again, it just needs to be on there, and we still want a little bit of give to it. So now we're going to do the ribs. So this is the color Sagebrush, and I'm going to pull out from the end, so into a thinner line like this, and then I'm going to put the thinner line right across the center of the pumpkin. Actually, I'm going to look and see which side I like the best. So whatever side I think looks better is going to be the top, and the side that I don't like as well will be the bottom. So hold and then start poking on the line. So this is going to be one of the ribs, and as we poke it, you'll see that the ribs start to take shape. So this is why we need some give to the pumpkin, and we don't want to get it too hard and felted too fast. This way we can still easily put in these ribs, and they're going to make nice little grooves there in the sides of our pumpkin. So as you go along, you hold and try and pull out that roving. So I like to just do it that way, and then I can get all the way around the pumpkin just with this one line without breaking my line. But if you do accidentally pull off that roving, or this technique is not working for you, you can always just overlap smaller pieces of the roving, and that will work just fine to make your ribs. So you see it's already getting a nice little indent there where we put that line where we've been poking extra. Alright, so now I'm going to do the next rib. So we're going to go and make a perpendicular line across the center of the pumpkin this way. So you can think of it as an X or a cross, or just a nice perpendicular line there right on the top of the pumpkin. And we'll go ahead and speed this up. Now that you've seen it once, regular speed, we'll go ahead and get all these in. So now we're going to put the next line kind of at a diagonal to that last one that we did. So we're dividing the pumpkin into 8 segments essentially. Kind of makes a star on the top and bottom. Alright, so one more rib to put in. And you see how I'm moving it into place, and then I poke one area and then pull out till we get all the way around. Okay, so there's what it looks like at this stage. So we're getting closer, but we need to do our final shaping. So now I'm still poking with the yellow needle. I'm going to poke right on that rib, kind of indent it more, and then I'm going to start poking on one little segment at a time. So we want to keep this roundedness and really move the wool out from the rib. So I'm poking at this angle, so towards the center of our little segment of pumpkin. So we want to move the wool in that direction and have a nice rounded segment in between our ribs. So I'm going to poke from this side, pushing the wool away from that rib. And again, this part I'm poking in not nearly as deep as before, more shallow poking and more gentle poking, but I do want to get this felted enough that it's going to not be fuzzy and it's going to keep this shape and smooth out a bit on the surface area. So you can poke the ribs as much as you need to, and they will indent in. And then we're going to poke gently on our little rounded segment of pumpkin here. So I just keep going until I'm happy with its shape, and I want it to be smoothed out a little bit, looking felted. That's pretty good. So that is what we need to do all the way around the pumpkin. So each little segment I kind of do individually. And you could always rewind if you want to see that again, but we're going to speed up now, and you can watch as I'm working on each little segment of pumpkin in between those ribs. So we make those nice indented grooves, and then have our little rounded part sticking out. Okay, so after that long bit of shaping, our pumpkin is finished, so except for needing its stem. So here is the stem I have on my original pumpkin, and this stem is actually two colors. So we need hedgehog and dune. So this is just a little mini tutorial. Oh, and then the orange pumpkin you will use just hedgehog, and the largest pumpkin is just dune. But on the video here, we're going to do a little quick demo on mixing a color together, or two colors together to get one new color. So I took just a little piece of each, and then I'm going to hold in my left hand and then pull from my right hand. You see I get some of the fibers pulling off each time, and that's kind of just mixing them together. I'm thinking I got too much hedgehog, so I just added a little more dune, make it a little bit lighter. So now I have a mix of the fibers, and now I'm going to make these into a little mini roll that will be the stem. So there you see my little roll. This actually might be on the larger size for a stem, but or on the larger side rather, but the size of the stem can vary, so we'll go ahead and use it. And I'm going to start poking in to the end. And again, please be very careful of your fingers. Try not to poke yourself. If you do find that you're prone to poking yourself, find another way to hold perhaps. You get some little pinchers, tweezers or something, or a skewer, and hold with that instead of your other hand. But anyway, I'm poking with the yellow needle just all the way around my stem and the top of it. I'm not really going to poke the bottom really at all, because that's what we're going to use to attach it to the pumpkin. We're going to leave the fibers unfelted at the base of the stem, but I am going to poke on the tip of the stem here. Little pokes, since this is a little stem, and it's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to roll it in between my hands. Sometimes I like to do this for your little shapes, and it just smooths them out more. So now I might poke just a little more after that. But now this is what we'll do with the bottom fibers, is open them up. And I'm still thinking my stem might be a little bit big, but we're going to make it work. And actually I could tear off a bit, so that sometimes can help too. I'll just make it a little shorter if it's looking too long. And there I've opened up the fibers at the base. So that's the little part that I'm going to use to attach with. So now get your stem in place. That looks like the right spot. And now I'm going to go in with the needle at the base of the stem and just stab it right into the pumpkin. So here you can see the angle better, but for me to do it, I need to kind of have it flat here. I'm just stabbing in right into the base of the stem at that angle and stabbing it right down into the pumpkin. So this does need to be a deeper stabbing, and get those fibers poked right down into the pumpkin, and then it's just going to stay on. So we need to go around the base really good once or twice. Make sure we get all the way around. And then I can do a little bit more shaping on the stem if I want. But this is looking pretty finished to me. Maybe a few more little pokes. And again, you can shape just a bit even once it's there. Alright, so there's my stem. And our pumpkin is complete. So again, you'll just make the other ones in the same way. It was those beginning rolls that make their shape different. And here they are. So I hope that you have enjoyed making your pumpkins. And if you would like to check out our other kits or supplies, please visit us at feltedsky.com. And if you have any comments or questions or want to show us your pumpkins, you can contact us through the website as well. So as always, happy felting!